nice and tidy edited down video, but I have ways for you to make it faster. You can click that little gear on the YouTube settings right there on the video and adjust the playback speed, make me sound like a chipmunk, and it'll go a lot faster. You can also look and see if there's timestamps for this project in the description, and if you're on a desktop, you can hover over the time bar at the bottom of the screen and see if it's chunked up into chapters, and then that way you can go directly to the step you're looking for. And lastly, you can also tap on the screen on the right hand side of the video picture or on the left hand side to make the video jump ahead, forward or backward if you're on a mobile device. And you can adjust that amount in your settings so you can have complete control over how much it jumps. So if you are on a desktop, you can use the fast forward or the rewind, and that will make it go faster as well. You can also enable subtitles, and the little CC on the screen will enable closed captioning. That way, if I am a little bit harder to understand with that double playback speed, the subtitles might help you out. All right, well, I know that it's not a nice little edited video, but if you sew with me, we'll get there together and it'll be lots of fun. And now for the live stream. Happy sewing! Hello. Where did I put that? I'm gonna put that there. Hello, how are you? Hi, Hannah. Hey, Shim. Hey, Kirsty. Hey, Eliza and Lisa. Hi, Donna. Hey, Margaret. Hey, Linda. Welcome to your first time watching. Hi, Muslin. It's awesome to have you guys here. How are you? I ran across a little short video by the last person who was the Romper Room host, Molly something. I thought this is so hilarious. I felt like commenting like, sometimes the beginning of my stream sounds sort of like Romper Room. In the US, that was the show when we were kids and they would say, hi to all the kids. So, and with a name like Sarah, I was always listening for my name because I knew it would be me. She never said my name. Hey, Rachel. Hey, Barbara. I'm really excited because we're doing some pattern drafting today. This is definitely my comfort zone. I love pattern drafting. I've planned for this, so I'm really hoping that this stream is going to be pretty, you can follow along with me. It's not going to get very distracted, I guess I should say. I just jinxed myself, of course, right? Hey, Danny. Yeah, right, Shim. It is. You'll get used to it. I do that all the time. So if you're new here, my name is Sarah, and I am a professionally trained pattern drafter and designer. I worked in the garment industry for a long time. I've been sewing for a really long time. And my style is kind of different than a lot of home sewing spaces. So don't feel like you have to adapt your sewing to my style of sewing. I'm kind of a hybrid of production sewing and home sewing. I'm doing more and more home sewing techniques as my stream has gone on, just because I'm not trying to change the way anybody does anything. Hey, Aisha. Hey, Terry. I'm starting with my version of the Archer, and I'll tell you about that. Hi, Leah. How's it going? I haven't seen you in a bit. Hi, Steve. Welcome. Oh, I'm so glad. Hi, Elena. Did I say Elena? Team Lurk. Do I have a Lurk emote? I don't even know. It was on its side. It's on its side. Yes. Okay, so if you're here to draft a camp shirt with me today, let me tell you just a little bit about camp shirts. So, and I'm going to be telling you about camp shirts from the traditional side of like what constitutes a camp shirt, but I'm not the camp shirt police. You can do whatever you want to your camp shirt. I don't really care. I'm going to be making mine a little bit more off tradition as well. But the one I'm going to draft today is kind of the traditional style. And then tomorrow I'm going to give you lots of options if you want to modify it in some fun way, like add gathers to the back, add a back yoke, maybe add gathers to the back yoke, make it maybe a cut-on sleeve, not a drop shoulder sleeve. what else am I going to do? I'm going to show you also the differences between a button band and the facing, which you usually see on the center front of a camp shirt. Hem options. My version is going to be a pullover version. I've been really inspired by this one I saw in a show, and then when I think it's Friday Pattern Company came out with their pullover version, I was definitely like, oh yeah, I definitely want a pullover version. Mine's going to be a little different than theirs. I'll show you how to do theirs a little bit, but theirs is using a notched collar, not a camp collar. And mine's going to be like a traditional pop-over placket. So if you've never done one of those, I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm really hot right now because I have my button-up shirt on. I should just take it off. So camp shirts traditionally, I kind of have one here. This one isn't very traditional though, so I'm not really gonna say, no, this one, I'm not gonna use that one. It's too busy anyway. So a camp shirt, oh, do I have my graphic? Oh, I meant to put my graphic on. Let's see what this is. I don't guarantee what this is. Nah, it's not, that's not what we want. Oh well. If you wait a second, let me pull up my image because I have made so much stuff regarding the camp shirt right now that I am somewhat prepared. I actually have a fun little video that I created that is already in the Guild, which is a community that I host. And I'm a guest editor tomorrow on the So Over 50 Instagram account. And so I spent a ton of time making a little video about camp shirts. I had a lot of fun doing it, spent a lot of time on it, and I love how it came out. So let me see here. I don't really like these graphics. Let me see. Let me see here. Summer camp. So we're doing a sew along this summer called the Summer Camp Sew Along. And that's just a play on words for here, those of us in the United States. What is this? Oh, I can't get that. Can I open this? Oh, that's interesting. I can't open my images. Ah, whatever. I'll just tell you. Oh, thanks, Muslin. Hi, Jan. How's it going? Did I say hi, Eliza? Hi, Kira. Nice to see you. All right, so camp shirts. They don't have a collar stand, so it's a convertible collar. A convertible collar means that when you button up the shirt, you can button it all the way to the top, but when you unbutton that top button, the collar is going to like open up and lay nice and flat. And it's very different in like something like a notched collar, which is like suit coats and pajama, like formal pajamas, like the Carolyn pajamas. That's a notched collar. You can't button that all the way up. There isn't usually a button that goes past that like area right here, right? So that's the difference, and there's no collar stand. There's usually no yoke on a camp shirt, and the center front placket is a facing, not traditionally a button band, but you can do that if you want. The sleeve armhole situation, it's a dropped armhole and a shorter sleeve, right? Like a elbow length sleeve or something like that, bicep, whatever you want. And drop shoulder can be anywhere in this area, right? Kind of like a t-shirt. And then the hem is usually straight across with a vent, which is like the side slit and the side seam. So obviously you can do lots of different things with that. It also has 1 to 2 chest pockets as well. So where they came from is it's usually considered either the Philippines or Cuba. There's a huge influence from Cuba, especially in the United States, because of the exodus of Cubans during the 50s because of the revolution in their country. And so there were a lot of people coming here, and it really impacted men's fashion, which is kind of cool. You don't really see those kinds of things that are really obvious in fashion history. So okay, wait, we have a question here. So the front is straight and vertical on a camp convertible collar. Yes, exactly. So let's pull up a picture of some sorts. I'm sorry, I thought I had a picture. I kind of gave up. I'll pull something up. Let's see here. We have this one here. And then let me share my screen. If you've never been in a live stream where the streamer shows their screen, it's going to look funny for a second. I got to find where it is. Here it is. So there we go. So this is the how to draft a camp shirt. All right, so you see how the center front there, it is open, but you could button that up all of the way. And then the collar would meet right there at the center front neck. This little drawing, like, it shows kind of like a cuff on the sleeve. It's really just a hemmed type of situation though. So, all right, so let's check out, well, let's talk about where I'm going from. So I'm going to be starting with a button-up shirt. And the reason I started with a button-up shirt is most people, men and women who sew, have a button-up shirt in their pattern stash, right? So I feel like it's a really good place to start, and there's actually not a whole lot of changes that we need to make in order to make it a camp shirt. So if you have one in your pattern stash, I suggest that you use it. If you have it handy, I suggest wearing it while you draft if it's not too hot to wear, because it is really helpful, especially if you don't have a dress form. We're gonna use my dress form today so that you can kind of see, you know, how it fits and stuff. So here is my button-up shirt. I'm just gonna put it on halfway for now. And let me zoom it in a little bit. And then we're gonna get straight to the drafting. And I'm also gonna show you how to put in a few darts. If you're starting with a men's and going to something where you need a little bit of shaping, or say your button-up shirt, you just want some shaping in your button-up shirt and you're just not kind of happy with how it hangs. So this is my Archer. The Archer is by Neckline Studio, and I have fit this to me. It's not buttoned up right now. It has a bust dart. I've shortened it. I moved the neck because the neck on all the Neckline patterns is a little too high in the back for me. And what else did I do to this thing? I probably added a lot more ease to the sleeve because I'm a huge fan of a lot of ease in a set-in sleeve. All right, so what I have here on the dress form is a muslin. Hey, Julie, how's it going? And I'm gonna show you how to add some darts in there. So all you need today is a button-up shirt pattern, ruler, you know, pens, pencils, scissors, paper, and your shirt. If you have sewn it, I highly recommend having your shirt handy because it's gonna be really great for some reference points. So the reference points that you're gonna need are to kind of have in mind when you start the drafting, which we're gonna do in just a minute. You're gonna want, I have a list here. What changes do you want? Like, are you thinking, okay, since I made this button up, I'd really like to change a couple of things, and you're gonna incorporate that in your camp shirt draft? That's fine, as long as they're not too drastic and you may need a muslin or a sample afterward. If you have made your button-up shirt, you're happy with the fit of it, I am pretty darn confident you can draft this camp shirt and not sew a muslin. That's how confident I am about the draft of this. I'm not gonna sew a muslin, and I really feel like you won't have to. If you're doing something crazy like going from a raglan to a set-in sleeve, which I am not demonstrating today, you're gonna want a muslin. If you're going from, I don't know, just something other that's very drastically different in the like armhole shoulder area, or if you're really, you know, if you're going from something like a men's, very big oversized men's shirt and you want it to be like a fitted, darted shirt, you're probably going to want to try that out before you cut and sew your camp shirt. So just say full disclosure there, or disclaimer, I should say. All right, so any changes that you're going to want to need. You're going to want to know what length that you want your camp shirt, and if you're going to add the little side vent, have that in mind with the length. Most likely, you're probably going to shorten a little bit, and you're going to keep the length of your camp shirt about the length of the center front or back of your button-up shirt. And you know that little swoop in the shirt tail hem that button-up shirt has? That operates as the side vent. And that's so that, you know, when you're wearing it and you have it tucked in, there's a lot less bulk there, and you have the movement and the shirt can kind of hang free. If it were straight across there with no vent, it'd get hung up on your hips and it'd just be too much fabric to tuck in. And that's, you know, shirt tail hem is meant to be tucked into pants. We don't do that, but yeah. Sew on flat. What do you mean by sew on flat. Hi Diane, how's it going? Do you mean a cut on sleeve? Because sew on flat to me says that's how you're sewing it in, like you sew the shoulders together, you put the sleeve on, and then you do the underarm side seam. That's what I would assume. Not sewing the side. Well, that's just a sewing change. Yes, what? Come on, Shem. This isn't your first day. So do you mean, like if you're talking about going from a set-in sleeve to a drop shoulder, that's fine. If you're talking about going from a cut-on sleeve to a set-in sleeve, cut-on, remember, is something like this. Let's, why do I have it on me? I'm shyer than that. So let's say this is your center front. That's a really terrible drawing. So instead of a set-in sleeve, which, you know, would give you an armhole right here and more shape right there. Oh my God, I've lost the plot there. Instead, it's got a no armhole. Oh, no, yeah, I don't care how you sew it. Yeah, if that's the case, yeah, I don't care how you sew it, Shem. You can sew it however you like. With camp style shirts, you can kind of get away with sewing it the other order. So, meaning sewing it in flat. All right, he means sew the sleeve onto the arm before you sew the side seam and sew the side seam. Yeah, I understand. Sews on flat. You sew the side. No ensure the camp shirt needs a set-in sleeve. Okay, so, okay, I understand what he's asking, but sewing order doesn't matter here. You can sew it in whatever order you want. You could sew the Sanders in another order if you want, if that makes sense. So I'm more concerned with what kind of armhole you have. Is it a armhole? Is it a drop shoulder? Something like that. If you like, no matter what your button-up shirt looks like, if you like the fit of it, you like the way it hangs, you like the way that the sleeve hangs on you, and the garment in general, that's the perfect button-up to start with. I don't care if you start with a raglan or a dolman, a cut-on sleeve, or a set-in sleeve, or a drop shoulder. It doesn't matter, as long as if that's what you want for your camp shirt, that's great. Because like I said, we're not going to be strict about tradition. I'm going to show you how to draft a traditional one using a set-in to a drop shoulder. Oh, okay. You weren't sure if they had difference in the armhole where it's shown as a set-in sleeve. Yeah, so you can go set-in or drop shoulder. There's really only like 1.5 to 2 inches when you drop it. It's not bad. Not much difference. Hi, Michelle. How's it going? All right, so you're going to want to know your sleeve length, if you want a yoke or you don't want a yoke, and that's about it. All right. So as far as like some of the options I'm going to do tomorrow, yeah, no worries, Shim. Yeah, and once we get into it, I think it'll be really obvious what you want out of your shirt. So I'm going to draft, like I keep saying, just kind of a traditional camp shirt. Now, if you want to stop there, that's great. And if you want to add any of the other details, I'm doing that tomorrow just so we can keep this kind of specific and kind of focused on this silhouette. Tomorrow I'm going to show you everything from button band versus a front facing, yoke without a yoke, yoke with pleat, yoke with gathers, pullover with a popover placket. I could probably pretty quickly show you how to make it a dolman or a cut-on sleeve. I think like that kind of silhouette, like the deer and doe Mellow shirt, that'd be a really cute camp style shirt. And then we can talk about hem options as well. If you want a high-low hem, if you want a shirt tail hem, if you want the straight or not. So, and then if you come up with other things that I haven't covered, because I know a lot of people in the guild and the sew along have been like, I hope you cover this. Make sure I cover it, because I will totally do that. All right. So here is my shirt. And so let me show you about how you want to look for adding some darts. And so I'm going to show you how I would find where I want to add these darts, and then how I would transfer them to the, what do I want to say there? yeah, I mean, how we would incorporate them into the pattern. So, all right, so let me bring over my shirt. So this is the Archer shirt without any darts here. I don't have a form that has a sleeve, so this is kind of a funky arm that's in there. And so it does make my sleeve kind of funky, but this shirt actually fits me really great. I have a ton of ease in the sleeve, which is a little excessive, but that's the way I like it. It gives me more comfort. So I have a yoke, I have a pleat right here, kind of a drop shoulder. It's not as dropped as it looks on the dress form here. Let me zoom in a little bit for you guys. A classic amount of ease for a camp shirt. Do you mean the ease in the sleeve, or do you mean in the circumference of the chest? I'm assuming you're going to say the chest. You're liking the Donnie. Is it possible to change it from pop over to a button up, or should I just look for a shirt pattern and compare the fit? We can do that, Eliza. Around the body. I would put what you like, Muslin. I'm going to show you what I'm going to add to mine because my button up fits me pretty close. Little hearts kind of crack me up. All right, so this looks really dropped on here. It's really just because, you know, there's a gap in my dress form between this little arm I've added here. I'm really gushy right here, and that would be filled in right there. It wouldn't look so dropped. It's probably a 1-inch drop, which would be enough for the camp shirt, but we can add a little more. And then here you have the front. So you can see I have all this excess fabric here. You can see the pole lines here. You see the back. This is very classic me. I have a pretty serious hip tilt. So this is very classic. I have like a ton of fabric. You can see the scoop back there. This is a custom dress form. This is definitely my scoop right there. So, and this is just hanging free. That's just what it wants to do, all right? I might leave that pin there, but I may not. So I'm gonna take out the arm so that we have some room to move here real quick. And then that way I can lift it up and we can get rid of the excess and some darts. So darts wouldn't be a very traditional thing in a camp shirt, but that's because mostly they started out for men. And there are men's shirts that have darts, usually in the back. You wouldn't really see that in a camp shirt. A camp shirt was designed to be a really loose, comfortable thing to wear while you're working outside. You know, it was, primarily developed in a country that was really hot, in an area or region that was really hot. All right, so let's get this sleeve out of the way here. You can see here's my side seam. This big old gap always kind of cracks me up. It's actually not that bad on me now. I'm a little bigger than my dress form now too. All right, so let's see how you're looking. So you see this right here. So I left my side seam unsewn just past right here. And when, I'm not going to give you like a textbook dart lesson, like straight out of the fashion world. I'm going to give you a very practical one to use on you and on your body. It's really hard to do this to yourself, and I understand that. So what I recommend usually is I usually set my phone up facing me and I do a little video. And as I'm fitting myself, I kind of hold the fabric. I'm like, okay, if I did this, maybe I could pin it, maybe I can't. Especially in the back, it's really hard. I'm watching what my hands are doing in the video, and I can kind of see how much they're pinching. And if I hold that and I go, all right, I'm pinching that, what is that? What is it actually? Even if you can use some sort of like washable marker to mark that, or a pin somewhere, or just holding it up to the camera, giving yourself a point of reference, holding the ruler up to it, you'd be really surprised what an inch is and what 2 inches is, and you really want to be honest about that. And remember, if you're pinching, that's double, right? So it's half on each side, right? Yeah, they're a very, very common shirt. So when I'm trying to get rid of the excess, I'm pretty much going to focus on getting rid of this big swingy thing right here. So I'm going to pull this up, right? I don't really want that. If I wanted I could do a vertical dart. So if I keep my side seam kind of where I want, I'm still gonna need to add something here, right? And I could do two darts on a camp shirt would be kind of odd. You can do it if you want. It's not that it's odd, it's just gonna be a little more fitted than probably what you're going for. We're going for kind of a looser fit. When I increase the circumference of this, it's gonna change this a little bit. I'm probably gonna add at least 2 inches on each side to the circumference of this to make it kind of a boxier, loose shirt. So that's gonna change it a little bit. All right, so I'm just gonna try and pull this up. I lost my pin here, let me go. And kind of get it hanging the way I want. And so then I'm just going to try and pin it out. This is all it is. There's nothing really fancy about adding darts. Well, that's it. So the key is that you want this to end before the fullest part of your bust. You don't want that dart ending on your apex, right? Because we've talked about this a lot. It looks really kind of bad. And sometimes that's the hardest part, is trying to get this to kind of calm down before it gets to that point. So just do your best. Let's see if get rid of this right here. I think this is just pulling on it right there. And make sure that you try and pin all of it. Don't just fold it like I have here. You really want to make sure you've pinned all of it, and find an end point and define it while you've got it in this position. So if we're like, all right, I really want this to end about right here. So I'm going to put my point there, and then I'm going to mark on here. You can even mark the whole thing, right? It'll be a little messy. I'm trying to make it face you, so I can't really see very good, right? You can see right here, and maybe you can, that it's not meeting the side seam, and that's okay. We're gonna add the dart shaping in there, and that's what's gonna get us to the side seam. So once we're happy with that, then we look at the back. And same thing, like back here, we can, like with a hip tilt, usually what you need to do is raise it up. You need to get it away from pooling in your lower back right here. And so most of the time I have to shorten things. It's the same with dealing with any kind of rounded back thing. Usually you have to pinch it out and put it somewhere, right? And that's what I do. I just kind of pinch these darts out and these excesses, and I kind of push them into a spot where I can handle it, whether it's gathers, pleats, or a dart. And in the back here, you're seeing a lot of camp shirts lately, and shirts in general, where they'll have like a princess seam here, and that's totally acceptable. If you'd really like some definition, you could do that. And how I would do that is I'd pin this against my form a little closer. Short sleeve shirts. Exactly. Get this a little closer to the body here. And we can see I have a lot of excess back here, right? Look at all that. Now, I don't really want my camp shirt to be that fitted. So leave yourself some wearing ease, right? So let's say we just kind of pinch out, I don't know, like maybe that much. You can see right where the princess seam would want to go, like that. And I would pinch that out in the dart form. And if you want it to be a dart, you can make it a dart, like a fisheye dart, where the fullness is at the waist and then it tapers out, so it's like a double-ended dart. If you wanted it to be a princess line, you're going to pinch that out, and basically those dart legs are now seams, and you just need to add seam allowance to those, and you've got your princess seams. Oh, that's a really smart shim. I like that. Jan, it probably is as far as medical, but you can do the same exact changes for it. And if you're new with me, you'll quickly get that I don't know all of the named changes. Like, I had to learn what an FBA was when I started live streaming, and I've worked in the garment industry for 30 years. So those kinds of like fit adjustments, those named fit adjustments, like sway back adjustment, FBA, rounded shoulder, those don't exist in the fashion industry because it's not custom sewing. If there's an issue like that, like say it's going through design and now you're doing a fit session and you've got all the people there watching your patterns get fitted, and people who may not even know much about like garment construction or fitting are there definitely critiquing that model, wearing everything. They don't know the names of those things. It doesn't matter. They don't care if there's a name or not. You get rid of the issue, whatever the issue is. And the reason I'm saying this is that all issues do not exist as a named adjustment in the home sewing world. So if you're finding that you can't find the fit adjustment that works for your body, don't worry about it. Just adjust how you need it and play around with your fabric, you know, like play around with moving it and seeing where you can push and pull it, pinch it out, and what happens when you do that. And be prepared to make samples and muslins, because I think that's really the key. Don't worry about all those named things. You don't have to follow that at all. So, and some of them aren't very good, just personally speaking. All right, so if we have our, we'll put a little back dart in here. And we can go right up to that shoulder blade if we want. If we wanted it to end lower, then we're going to need to kind of get rid of this a little lower. And we'll just sort of start there. And then we can draw it in as well. This is so big. This is so loose that I'd really have to like take out a lot through here. And I've got a pleat here too. So, you know, if you're going to get rid of the pleat, you're probably not going to have a pleat with back darts, so you're going to need to get rid of that too. And the way I would do that right now, if you want back princess seam or back darts in a button-up shirt that has a pleat back here, I want you to unpick this region here that you've sewn and slide that pleat off the end, because that's all it is. That's all how they put it in there. So I'll show you. All of this is, it's kind of like another fitting adjustment, right? You're just sliding this fabric somewhere. I know I didn't put a back stitch, but I put one like in one spot here. This is such an awkward angle, the seam rip. Okay, so here's my pleat, right? And then we'll line that back up with the seam. And then that's my new center back line. I'm going to show you how to do that on the table as well. So there's my new center back line going to 0 at the hem. So you would draw a straight line to 0 at the hem right there. And that's your new center back. And that already has helped a little bit of this fullness back here. It's laying a lot nicer now. All right, so play around with adding darts and princess seams if you want. If you're going for like a looser, boxier look, which is kind of what I'm doing, except I do have one side bust dart on mine. So let's start drafting. And I'll show you some of this stuff. Ugh. All right, does anyone have any questions or anything on how you want to start or anything? So what I did was I cut a piece of paper for each of my pattern pieces. I'm adding a yoke to mine, but for this draft today, I'm going to show you how to get rid of the yoke. Sorry, I'm thinking at the same time I'm talking. I have my front here, and you can see here's my side bust dart. I'm going to use a Sharpie so you'll be able to see a lot better than you can right now. Here's my sleeve. I've just got it folded sitting here. And then here's my little pieces. I have a yoke and I have a pocket here, which I actually need this pocket, and then the collar is going to be drafted here. Wait till you see how easy it is to draft the collar. It's going to be great. Details of this. But there's my side bust dart going into the pockets. It's super wrinkly. It's a super wrinkly linen. I have just a single pleat back here. This is the collar stand. So remember how I said that the camp collar doesn't have a collar stand and collar. It just has a convertible collar and that's it. Here's what I'm talking about. This is a collar stand. Button-up shirts have these. And so when we draft our camp collar, basically what you're doing is building in this little stand into the collar so that it can roll down. and we don't need this collar stand anymore. And so when I'm talking about how a camp shirt functions right here, sorry, this fabric's really busy. This one does have a yoke. See, it only has the collar. Here's the seam right here, and the roll line right here. That would be the collar stand. And so this one can be buttoned all the way up. And once it is, and the collar is folded down, oh my gosh, please cooperate. Your collar would meet at the center front like this. See that? Your collar would meet at the center front like that, rather than a notched collar where you can't button it up. It kind of like swoops out like this and makes like kind of a rounded area. Okay, Eliza. Oh no. Does the camp should not have any yokes? No, it does not, Shim. But you can add one if you want. That's fine. All right. You know I wanted a yoke for mine, and so that's why I made my paper so small, and now I have some regrets. Is this piece of paper bigger? Yeah, let's steal this one. I think that'll be big enough for me. Trying to stay organized here. All right, so let's get our shirt on the paper. So the first thing you're always going to do is you're going to draw a straight line. It's going to be our center back. I'm using just a see-through ruler, probably not the most accurate at this point. It's pretty old and battered, you can tell. Always start with a straight line, and we're going to line up our pattern piece on here. And remember how I said that we're going to have this pleat taken out? I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Take in one thumb, let out 1.5 thumb. Wait, shouldn't I do something like that when I'm writing? Oh, yeah, exactly. It really, you will make mistakes doing that kind of stuff, but I promise the more you do it, you get really good at being able to tell what to take out. Even if you don't know the amount as a specified amount, if you're like, okay, I was pinching that much, when you get here, you're like, okay, what was that? You don't have to know what it is. You just need to know the amount and transfer it well. And if you're doing big changes, hopefully you're going to do another sample anyway. All right, so this right here is the center back, and then this is the pleat of my back. We're going to hold this down here, so we have this center line right here, right? And here's my pleat right there. And now I'm going to hold this, and we're going to pull this over, and we just got rid of the pleat. It's gone, all right? So now we're going to trace off this back. Oof. You can see my yoke has a really big wing right here, and that's because I made a rounded back adjustment. I'm going to call it that since that's what you guys call it on mine. Not necessarily. It could, but a lot of times it's just a pivot. So I'm only going to take it out at the top. Can you zoom out a little? We can't see the whole piece. You can't see the whole piece? On my screen, you can see the whole piece. You want me to go a little bit? Yeah. How's that? That better? Yeah, it looks better, huh? So, Muslin, some people will do the entire amount. If you can see it on the pattern, because some of them will give you an option, like if you want the pleat cut here, if you want a smooth back cut there, you know what I mean? So if you feel like that pleat goes all the way to the bottom, you can draft it out. If you're feeling like that's too full back there. I'm not taking any out across my hip. I know that wouldn't be a good plan for me. So, all right, so now here's my yoke. And my yoke obviously has this shape right here because of the rounded back adjustment that I told you I did. So I'm gonna have to let go of that a little bit. We're gonna line up the center back yoke on the seam line here, and we're gonna trace it off. Now the Archer has a little bit of a little bit of ease right here in the shoulder. So if you have the Archer, or is it the front shoulder? Oh, I think it's the front shoulder. So you'll see the front shoulder is bigger. Is it the front shoulder that's bigger? I can't remember. One of them's bigger. Yeah, so don't just pivot it out then. Just pivot it out the top. That's fine. It's not like all of a sudden, because we did that, we changed the grain of the pattern. I think a lot of people think that certain grain elements of patterns is ingrained in the pattern piece. But the grain isn't there until we cut it in fabric, right? So now we've just changed, that's the grain line of this piece. That makes sense? All right, so here we have this little yoke here. We have it traced on here, and I'm gonna smooth out this little wing. Now, if I wanted to kind of maintain this little bit of roundedness here, so right here is my old line, I could drop this down a little bit like that. This is probably not an issue you are gonna have on your shirt. So I'm gonna kind of blend this in here. So this is the height that I want, but this is the width that I want right here. And then we're gonna blend that in. I put X's through the things that I don't want. And so now we have a back. My shirt has a center back seam. I'm going to put it on the fold and lose that shape. And it's important to keep the neck edge the same size now, or are we going to change that for the convertible collar? If you put your center back on the fold, you shouldn't be changing your neck seam at all. So I don't think you're gonna have to worry about that, because essentially all you're losing is the shaping that's probably right through here, right? So you're gonna have this little bit of a curve. So as long as you put your center back neck on your fold line and your hem on the fold line, that's where you would lose that amount. So your back is going to kind of swing out like this, right? Trying to think how you could keep that back seam. You could move it to a princess line if you want. Okay, so now we have a back. Now, let's talk about the neckline of your button-up shirt. How do you like the fit of it? Is it really high up? Is it like right there? Is it a formal button-up? Or is it more relaxed? Is it a little bit away from your neckline? If you have a button-up that's right up to the top of your neck, like when you button that collar stand, it is like fitting your neck really closely. I'm gonna recommend that you back your neckline off like 1/4 of an inch from your neck. I'm gonna maintain some of it, Jan. Some of it, not really. I'm gonna lose a little bit of it. I'm not really focused on that adjustment on this, because since not everybody has that need for it, because I'm gonna put my yoke back on my camp shirt, just because I really want the back to look a certain way. So I'll get to put it back there. But yeah, like putting this kind of like angle in there and kind of moving it here. The rounded backs and hip tilt, like I'm going in here and out here. It's a lot, All right, so we're going to, oh, and this is another thing I want you guys to be aware of is your seam allowances. All the seam allowances you're gonna see me using today are 1/2 inch, except at my neck and my collar are 1/4 inch. So when you are removing anything off your pattern, and say you want your neck to get 1/4 of an inch bigger, removing 1/4 inch around is gonna make it 1/4 inch bigger as long as you maintain the seam allowance that was already on that pattern, all right? Rainbow rulers, I'm gonna use eyelet. All right, so we're gonna take the neck, make it bigger by 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just gonna do a parallel line around the perimeter of the neck here, 1/4 of an inch, right? Now we don't want this. And our back is pretty much done. This is it. So now what we're gonna do is, except for our hem, we're gonna do the hem later. I'm gonna draw in my seam allowances, and I'm gonna do this because in a second we're going to need this measurement right here for our collar. And so I'm just gonna use a different color so that I also remember. So like I said, my neck seam is 1/4 of an inch, my seam allowance. If yours is a 1/2 inch, if yours is 5/8, if yours is 3/8, whatever, you just need to make sure you get this measurement from your shoulder seam to your center back. So you're gonna record that right now. Be really accurate about this. Because guess what, you guys? You're not gonna get to complain about the collar not fitting your shirt if you didn't draft it right. So it's up to you right now. Make sure you get a very accurate measurement from your shoulder to your center back right on that seam line, right on it, okay? So make sure you draw on your seam allowance and measure. The other thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure I have a right angle here because I can tell, 30 years I can tell when it's not perfectly right angle. It's really that right back here, it's kind of dipping a little bit. So I'm just kind of giving myself a better, why does it look like that? It just looks a little high. Okay, that's my center back. All right. All right, so now let's set this aside. And now we're gonna do our front. Here's my front, and I'm gonna flip it over. And you know, let me show you about these darts too. Let's talk about those a little bit. Let's get this off the dress form here. All right, so here's that dart, right, on the front. So let's unpin it now. Make sure we got it all marked there. And you know, we have both legs here. We also have this little fold line. We like this. We really like having these fold lines here. There's my center line here. So let's draw that in just so you can see it visually. So this is basically my dart, right? So we can lay this onto the pattern piece, line up, you know, your cut edges, you know, your hem, whatever you got, right? And you're going to transfer that dart right onto your pattern piece. And then, and yours could be here at the armhole, it could be anywhere around the perimeter of your bust, really. You can put a dart anywhere. So I have a side dart. I feel like the side dart is really great for kind of a looser, boxier shape shirt. And so then when we draft that in there, we have our dart on there, we have our dart legs, and we really need to true up this side seam here. I'm trying to find a little scrap piece of paper. Let's do this right over here. I like to use a tracing wheel. It's a needle point tracing wheel when I'm transferring things like this from fabric to paper. So if you don't have one of these and you're really worried about getting it perfect, you can just use a pin, just like this, and just poke some holes along that. All right. And now I'm also gonna just do the side seam here so I kind of know what I'm working with here. This and this. All right. So now, let me draw that in for you. And then this was the side seam, right? So now when you fold your dart, you're gonna fold your dart on your paper, so we're gonna get this shape and get it all the way to the side seam. You're gonna fold the edge that the seam allowance is getting pressed toward. So if we want our dart to be pressed up towards the armhole, we're gonna start on this top edge here. I saw the coolest trick on someone's Instagram. I have been doing this for so long and having to draft the shape of a dart. The trick, I don't know if I can show you. Oh, maybe I can show you with this iron here. So you've seen me do this before. So when you fold the dart closed, don't fold past this point. Just don't do it because it's really hard to get the dart to be accurate to do this. I usually like hold it down, right? And I pull my dart over and I let it know who's boss. Like I am the boss of this dart. I get this all lined up, right? And I don't let it fold past that point. Well, the little trick she showed was to put this point on the corner of a table and then it just magically does it. See, it just falls off of the point. It was amazing. Oh yeah, they do, Dana. They're really affordable too. I have had mine since I was 18 years old. So yeah. Yeah, you can get it at Waywack. I have one linked on the tools page of my website. Because just make sure you don't get, like, don't just buy a tracing wheel. Make sure it's needle point. These are very, very sharp. Don't get the soft kind. It won't work when you're transferring through fabric. Like say you wanted to copy your favorite pair of jeans, you need something that's going to penetrate the fabric onto the paper. So yeah, there's two different styles. The other one is for like using like carbon tracing paper. So it's different. All right, so now we have our dart here. And you can see, look at how off my side seam is here, right? So let's just pretend like this side seam goes like this, right? So now what we need to do is blend this in. So blend in your dart like this. And then you're gonna cut, make sure it's all lined up. You're gonna cut this and make sure your dart's pressed the way you plan to sew it. You can press it up or down, whatever you like. And then now we have the shaping that we need. And so we're gonna take this all the way to the side seam here. And we have our notch here and here. And now we have a dart. And if you're with me a lot, you know that I like having a back off. So I will back the dart off like a 1/2 inch right there because I like to puncture a hole in my fabric when I sew. So I'm gonna get rid of those pins. The smooth ones are for using with carbon paper. Yeah, all right, so that's how you're gonna transfer a dart onto your thing. See, no problem, not a big deal, not a lot of rocket science. I see so many videos about darts, and it's kind of like day one pattern drafting. All right, so we're gonna put our straight line. I'm gonna turn this around, sorry guys. It's just like my comfort zone here. I like this towards me. All right, so here's our front. Sorry, it's upside down, so let's just review. So this one has a button band, right? So I have my notches here. Oh yeah, Michelle, well use whatever works for you, whatever you like. All right, we have my bust dart here. You can see I have two holes there because I have a back off on there. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry about it, it's no big deal. We have my curved hem here, and then also down here I have the notches for the button band as well. I probably got rid of the easing in the shoulder, but I can still see a little bit of curve there, so I'll probably straighten that out. All right, so let's talk about your button band. If your button-up shirt has a separate button band, you're gonna need that pattern piece. If it has the folding kind like this, you're good to go. If your left and your right front are drafted differently, usually what that means is that there's one that has a fold over button band like this, where you just fold it twice, sew and stitch down. The other side is probably, if you laid it on top, it's probably a lot shorter. It probably comes to, I'm gonna say like right here, and you have a separate button band. So I would use the one that has the built-on button band. It's gonna be a little less work to figure out. But if you have your one with your separate button band, I'll tell you how to do that. I'm trying to think if I know where the pattern piece like that is really quickly. That's the Fairfield's like that, right? Fairfield has a separate button band, right? So let's get mine out real quick. I'll show you how to line it up on there. Let's see. This or this. No, the Fairfield doesn't have a separate button band. Who has a separate one? Doesn't the Archer? The Archer does. The Archer does. I'm thinking, I always think it's the men's that has it, but it isn't. Let me show you how to do that. Cuff. Don't need that. Here's the other front. And where's my button band? This has got to be it, right? Yeah, this is it. Okay. All right, so do you see how your button band probably has like some markings on it, like for button holes or buttons, depending on how it buttons. Where this buttonhole is, that's the center. That's your center of your body, right? So fold this guy over in half. And then figure out what the seam allowance is on this raw edge here, right? I can tell. You don't even have to tell me the seam allowance on this pattern piece. I'll show you how you figure it out. If this buttonhole is in the center, it's a 1/2 inch away. This one is a 1/2 inch away from the fold. A 1/2 inch over, right there. And what's left, which is a 1/2 inch, is the seam allowance. So the button placket, the buttonhole is going to be centered in the middle of the placket right there. So that's how I know this is a 1/2 inch seam allowance right there. And so with this front, you're going to sew it on there, right? Pretend like it's sewn on there. Overlap it just like that amount. And then your center line is going to be where that buttonhole is. I have this upside down, sorry. I don't know why I did that. I'm trying to accommodate so many different things, so I know it seems a little bit overwhelming. So there we go. So that is the center of your garment. Always where the button and buttonhole is the center of you. So knowing that information is really important for your pattern, especially if you're one of the people that's going to do a pullover version. All right. So make sure you note that. Sew it on there with the seam allowance, fold it in half, mark your buttonhole, and that's how you're going to find that out on your pattern piece. All right. Hit a ruler. There we go. Okay, so here's my front. My button band has the fold over, and look, there's no button and buttonholes marked on this piece. So you're gonna have to figure that out. Because I know the width of the placket is 1 inch, because we just did that little bit of math on that piece, I know that, I'll show you. Let's see, let's draw our placket on here. So this right here is my finished placket width. And now the other way I could tell this without having, if I didn't look at that piece right there, say we don't have a separate button placket, say we have a pattern that gave us cut 2 of this front here where you fold, and you get your placket. The way we can figure out what the center is folding your placket like as if it's sewn. The center of this placket right there, I'll use my tracing wheel, is the center of the garment right there. So that's my center right there. All right, so now we have our center. Now, okay, this is kind of a choose your own adventure. I'm going to show you how to draft this a traditional way. So when we're done, we're going to have a facing, not a button band on our camp shirt. If you want just this style of closure, don't change any of this. Just trace your front off exactly the same way. You don't have to do the facing that we're going to do. All right, so I'm going to line this up on this line here. So this is my center. This is my extension. This is called the button extension or the placket extension. And it's the amount you need so that when you button up your shirt, you have fabric on either side of your center to accommodate the width of your buttons and buttonholes and give you some coverage so you maybe don't get any gaping, and just to kind of close your shirt in a nice way. So you can make that amount as much as you want or as little as you want. Just remember to bear your buttons in mind if you're going to go really small. So, all right, so we're going to land on this notch here. And I'm going to line it up on my line on top and bottom. Actually, I'm going to do this upside down because I really want the my pattern to be correct as far as like having an entire right side of my body. So now I'm going to trace this off and you'll see it better. All right, how are you doing? Is any of this confusing? Or are you feeling like it's too much? Is it... If you have questions, lay it on me. Here's my front, and then I'm going to put my dart in here. And then here's my back off, right here, I think, right? This one? I kind of moved it around a little bit. Yeah, it's this one right here. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, so here's my front. It has a 1/2 inch extension. So this is the center of my garment, of me. Now, the things I'm thinking about are my shoulder lining up to my back, my side seam lining up to my back, and the neckline change that we made to the back. And we haven't made any circumference changes yet. That's why we didn't cut out our back. We also need to do our hem changes. So, all right, so we have our collar here. So I'm going to add that, or remove that 1/4 inch. So I'm just adding a line, that's what I was going to say. So we're going to take off the 1/4 inch around the neck like we did on the other one. Right? I'm going to use my back to sort of make sure that this is going to line up well. It's not cut out yet, so it's a little annoying. We're going to straighten this line because the grain line archer has a little bit of like a hump there to allow for the gathers. Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Muslin. And I think like when you see, like, I feel the same way because as a pattern drafter, I would probably do it a way I like. And so anytime I'm using someone else's pattern, it's almost like you're, if you have a favorite recipe and then you want to use someone else's, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to end up with the same thing, but they're doing it a little differently here, and I just need to figure out how they're doing it. All right, so I'm going to lay this on here as if it's sewn, lining up my neckline here and my shoulder. There's too much stuff on my table right now. And I'm just going to trace the back onto the front here to make sure I have some nice smooth transitions and make sure actually that I lined it up correct, nice and. All right, so here's my back. This is really important. You want these transitions because if they're not like that, like say you have a point here like this, you need to get rid of that point. Yeah, we are going to change it a little bit, Libby, but we're just focusing on getting our front and our back kind of going, and then we're gonna revisit these little areas here. So first I'm doing my neck, getting my shoulder, my neck, and my centers, and kind of the body of the garment in a place where then now we can start adding the change to the armhole and the change to the circumference and then the change to the hem. All right, so now I'm feeling pretty good about this area here. I don't know why I'm holding that. Now, let's see. The hem's the easy part. We could check our, let's do our circumference next, because we're going to incorporate this with our change to our armhole. I'm going to cut a little bit of my paper off just so that there's less on the table here. And we can actually cut a bunch of this off here. Hey Sydney, how's it going? I'm going to cut this off right here so it's less confusing. Oops, I didn't want to do that. All right. Just keep your scraps. You'll probably have to tape some of it back on here. All right, so now if you have a set-in sleeve and you want to drop that armhole a little bit, we're going to push this armhole out that way a little bit. Mine is already dropped a little bit, so I'm not going to drop it very much. I'm just going to drop it a little so you can kind of see the difference. I'm not a big fan of really dropped shoulders. If you're going for a very loose boxy shape, you can drop that line a lot. If you're still wanting something a little bit more fitted, especially in this upper area of your body, don't drop it too much because it's really hard to get a comfortable sleeve armhole if you drop this a lot, but this is snug under here. It's going to do some funky things with like a pleat right here. Nice. It's 80 degrees there and it's been raining here. All right, so let's say your set-in sleeve is like this, right? That's your set-in sleeve line. So we're going to add to this shoulder length here to get it kind of dropped. Personally, I wouldn't do it more than 1.5 inches. I think that's the max that you're going to want to do. That's about what mine is going to be. You can keep the rain. Yeah, I think you've had enough of that. So I'm just going to add a 1/2 inch to mine right here. And I'm going to push out my circumference of my garment also. And I think I'm going to add, I kind of want to really like kind of a, I'm trying to decide. Like when I put on my button-up shirt, it's pretty close. I have a shirt on right now. So this is a good time. Let's try on our shirts and see, what do we want? How do we want this to fit? All right. So let's put my button-up on. My only complaint about this is that I feel like it's a little too short on the sides. My swoop is too high. All right, so here's my button up. See how high my sides are? It's kind of dark, sorry. Let's look at my armhole though. So here it is. See, I don't really want it dropped too much more. My sleeves kind of hung up inside there, my short sleeve shirt. I would even be satisfied with this, but if my sleeve was more of a set-in, it'd be like right about here, right? And we're just going to drop it. So drop shoulder means we're pulling this seam, this armhole seam, down our arm a little bit, not unlike like a t-shirt, you know, like a traditional men's boxy t-shirt with the graphic on it. That's going to be kind of a drop shoulder. We don't want to go that extreme. And when we do this, we're going to flatten the cap of our sleeve as well. So, but look at my fit. My fit is like pretty much just my circumference plus a little bit of ease. And I'm kind of wanting something a little more boxy. I would like to be able to maybe pinch 3/4 inch on each side. So that means I would like to add 3 inches in circumference to my shirt. Let me take my shirt off now. Because while it's raining and weird here, it's also kind of muggy and humid. So now one way we could do this is just slice straight down our whole shirt and move it 3/4 inch over, since I'm adding the circumference. Or what I could do is just add it to this lower portion here. So I only really want to add a 1/2 inch here. Let's say you've got a proper set-in sleeve and you really want to add that full 1.5 inches here. I would add a line right here 1.5 inches away from your shoulder, and then decide how much you want to do here. So now what we could also do is just take this and trace it on here. I like using pattern pieces. So I'm going to add a 3/4 inch guideline. 3/4 inch is going to give me 1.5 inches on the side here, and then I'll do it to here, and I'll have 1.5 inches on there. Oh yeah, my daughter's like back east right now, and she's just like, oof, it's like being at home. All right, so we're gonna pull this over, and I'm gonna line up my armhole to this side seam here. That's just lining up so well, it's kind of crazy. Let's draw the side seam in here first. So I'm just gonna go straight over. You see how this line right here? I'm gonna keep it lined up here. If we were in pattern school, we'd be doing this a little differently. We'd be being a little bit more true to, like, we would slide it along a perpendicular line to our center front. But we're just casually drafting for ourselves, right? All right, and so when you do that, say you're doing it a lot, let's draw our perpendicular line. I'm going to show you something. Yeah, and I actually could have done that a little better. So the reason you would want to slide it along the line is because you really want this point here to stay in the same spot. And our mind will definitely kind of move things along it. So you don't really want to change anything right here. You want that to stay kind of intact, right? So that's why you want to slide it along that line there, and it'll be more accurate. So all right. So let's get our shape of our armhole here. I hate drafting with Sharpies. It's everything. The lines are so flat. It's really hard to see where I'm at. So there's I added a 3/4 inch here, and we're only adding a 1/2 inch here, so we're going to blend this in, and I'm going to pull this part, this upper part of the armhole over. We're ignoring this lower half. We're only concerned right here. We're going to pull this over, and same thing, you kind of want to, you know, stay on a perpendicular line. So let's put this shoulder point right here. This is the shoulder point here. Sorry for all the Sharpie. I'm too liberal with it. So I'm gonna do a pencil line. All right, so I made a perpendicular line intersecting this shoulder point here. And now what I'm gonna do is, I wish I had a line on here. I need a line on here. Sorry, a little late. Here we go. All right, so now we have this line on here, and we're gonna line that up on the point there to there. So I line it up here and here on the same point. And now we're going to blend in this armhole right here. And now we're going to blend this in down here with the armhole at the lower end here. So that the armhole changed by a 1/2 inch here at the top, and 3/4 of an, it went 3/4 inch out, but it only went a 1/2 inch out up here, in other words. I just dropped the armhole. Oh, down here. Well, I think I am going to drop the armhole. Do I want to drop the armhole? Yeah, I do. Underarm. Yeah, right here, right here. Yeah. I'm trying to decide if I want to do that because I'm not going for a really severe one. Let's drop it a 1/2 inch. Yeah. I'm trying to decide what I want. My drafting is usually so much tidier than this. Yeah. Let's drop it a 1/2. I'm going to drop mine a 1/2 inch. If you want to do a little bit more, I wouldn't go much more than 3/4 though. And I'm going to do it perpendicular right here. So to the side seam here, like this, and then we'll blend that in. It's hard to keep track of my lines right now. Here's my new armhole. And so sometimes I cover up all the icky stuff so you can see it better. So let's do that real quick, so it doesn't look like I'm a maniac here. Let's do that. There, we can see my armhole a little better now. Less confusion. Why have I dropped it? To give it a little bit more of a loose, boxy feel. My whiteout, yeah. If you knew how much money I've spent on whiteout over the course of my pattern drafting career, because of in the good old days of not having CAD, and we had paper, and one of the, well, a couple of places I worked at, they had all the colors of the pattern paper, because it comes in like blue, green, pink, and manila, and I had whiteout to match all of those. Only 2 of the places allowed me to use it. A lot of places you just had to recut the whole piece, even if there was a typo that you hand wrote. If you spelled something wrong, or if you were like, oh no, this is cut 2, not cut 1, they would be like, nope, cut it again, you know. Okay. All right, does that look better? Okay. So now we have the front armhole. Let's do the same to the back armhole. Let's do a couple of guidelines this time. I've never really taught how to do this. I'm sorry I'm being a little bit willy-nilly there. So let's try. I'm going to put my paper here on a straight line of my table real quick, so that I get a line here to follow. There we go. Okay, and then this one I might wing a little bit using the front. I'll use the back though. But the yoke, remember, I kind of pivoted it a little bit. So I'm just putting a guideline at those intersection points. Goes all the way there. But also remember that this goes down like this on my pattern piece. So yeah, this isn't going to be the greatest guideline. We're going to change it now. I'm ruining my pattern piece too. All right, so we're going to go 3/4 of an inch out at the side. I want a looser shape, right? So we're going to add our 3/4 here. We're going to go 3/4 down. So first thing we'll do is we'll draw in our 3/4 there with the top line, where the pre-dropped line right there. And then as far as the back goes, let's go like this. We're going to add a 1/2 inch here, like this. This is my line right here, right? This is my line right here. It's going back out to that spot right there. Let's put some paper over this. It's confusing me too. Continue this like that. But see, that's not quite accurate. Like just making a parallel on the front, you covered up the drop line. Did I really? Oh, thank you, I did. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. It's a lot to keep track of right now. Yeah, this is the one I want right here. Perfect. Got it, got it, got it. Saved the day. Something like that. I might have to clean this up a little bit later. Like that. All right. Yeah. Okay. So you see how I just put this half inch, I just did a parallel line to this armhole? I'm going to be honest with you. That wouldn't be very acceptable. That's actually not how you would do it if you're drafting professional pattern, because really what you're trying to do is you're moving it this way, right? You're not moving it this way, because what that essentially does is it drops the shoulder point down, because right now this shoulder point is right here, right? And then if we just add that half inch there, now the shoulder point got dropped 1/4 of an inch from here to here. If you're thinking about everything on an XY axis and the grid, right? So technically that's not how you would do it. I did that on the front though. I'm pretty sure. No, we'd use the guideline. So, you know, I'm actually going to do it on the front like that. And the reason I'm going to do this is because I don't really want to worry about if I've changed the angle of my shoulder. Right now, I know that this slope works for me. So I don't really want to monkey around with changing the shoulder angle, because the shoulder angle on me is like kind of, I fit that, right? So I'm just going to do the parallel line here, and we're going to do the same thing over here. So in other words, here's my shoulder line, right? This line right here, my old armhole right here. We're going to do a half inch line, and this is it right here. And I think that the other one would have been a little bit higher, or a little bit lower, sorry. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so now we have our new shoulder point here. We have this one here, and we're going to drop it down. So now let's trace it a little bit. So I'm going to just move this down here. Wait, did we go down 3/4? I did, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because we're not working on a circumference issue right now. We're working on a style line issue. You know what I mean? It's a little different. So we're going to go down like this. And we're going to kind of pencil this in here. Could use my French curve, which I have also had since I was 18 years old. This is so messy. I really don't like the Sharpie stuff here. I'm probably going to clean this up after the stream, because I really can't guarantee that it's coming out the way I really want it to, as far as like visually. All right. Let's do a little check-in. We're doing so much to this pattern, you know? It is a half inch. Okay, thank you. I thought it was a half inch. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm sorry. That looks way better. All right, so we're just gonna add this It's 3/4 in circumference, and we're dropping the shoulder by a half. I really waffled on that one. Like that. And now we're gonna cover up some of this. I'm actually just gonna cut out this upper portion here right now because I wanna get rid of some of all this confusing stuff for me. Live streaming and drafting, sometimes it's just something I didn't get to practice. Also a rotary knife, not a really great, whoops, not a really great way to cut things out. All right, so I trimmed off that 1/4 inch that we got rid of. We've extended our shoulder a 1/2 inch. We dropped the armhole a 1/2 inch. We increased the circumference 3/4 inch. Same thing here. Extended the shoulder a 1/2 inch, dropped the armhole a 1/2 inch, made the circumference 3/4 inch larger. And then we took off a 1/4 inch from the neckline. All right. All right, we have the sleeve and the collar and the hem to do. Let's do the hem really quick. So now you need to decide what length that you want. For me, I'm gonna go with the length of my shirt right here. And so I'm just gonna square across. You just need a straight hem here. And we're gonna add a little bit of paper on the side here. You know, usually you're gonna see a button down is gonna have a little bit of this like curve here, and you can just ignore that. You can kind of straighten out your side seam and that'll be enough, depending upon how much you want at your armhole as well. If you're dropping your armhole, you need to go out a little bit at your underarm as well. All right, so see how I have this little bit of an angle here, like that? We don't want a point right here. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna gently angle the bottom here. I don't mind a little bit of contour right here. That's fine with me. And same here, we're gonna come down the side seam, but we don't want an angle there, so we're going to do a nice transition. I am going to do a side vent, but I'm not going to worry about that right now because I really want to get to the collar and the sleeve. So I'm going to walk my side seam here. So we're going to line it up on the side seam. I'm just going to use a pencil here to hold it like this. Here's my dart right here. So I'm going to mark it on here. We're going to close the dart just like that and keep walking. My pencil is at the seam line right here. And then here is my center back line right there, which is right here. So not bad. So we'll square out from there and kind of make a straight line to center front. All right. So if you've decided you know how much you want your vent to be and you know how much your hem allowance is, you need to add that to your vent amount and you're going to put a notch up here. So, you know, like a traditional is probably like a 4-inch vent. If you don't want it that big, you don't have to do it that big. Women's are probably going to be a little bit shorter because we wear our shirts a little higher than a guy. A guy usually wears it a little lower. And I think 4 inches is a pretty good length for a vent. You could even do a longer back and a shorter front if you want that look. So just make sure that when you measure where your vent height is that you measure from the armhole down to the vent height for both. It's because your back, if your back is longer, you don't want to put the vent thing in the wrong spot. So I'm just going to put a little mark there for my vent. I'm just marking up 4 3/4. Nothing fancy. All right, so we have our hem, we have our armhole done. Now we're going to do our sleeve. If you drop your armhole, you mean at the shoulder? Or do you mean, is that what you mean by the shoulder? Is that what I said? Something like that, right? If you drop your shoulder at the shoulder, right here, if you pull this over, you're going to need to drop this a little bit because you've made your armhole smaller, right? So we're trying to maintain this diameter or make it a little bit bigger because we want like a looser fit, right? Right now my back armhole looks a lot bigger, and that's because my shoulder seam comes forward on the body. So really like the shoulder line on this pattern, this is how I can tell too, is like when you line up your pattern pieces on the side seam here and your center front, so put your center front, line up your center front and your side seam. Look at how much taller my back is. And if I fold it over and line it up like this, you can see, I actually don't like that either. That kind of bugs me. But I won't focus on that right now. You can see that this right here is really my shoulder line, this folded part. So if I was wearing this garment, it's going to hang from this point because these are connected right here. Oh, the underfront. No, I mean like if you're doing a drop shoulder and you're dropping your shoulder, you're going to have to drop your armhole a little bit or go out. I went out and then I dropped it a little bit. I'm not explaining that really well, I'm sorry. Let's look at our sleeve. Here's our sleeve right here. So right now we have, let's look at our sleeve here. Right now we have dropped the armhole, or we have, made a dropped armhole, right? So now my armhole is a 1/2 inch this way. We've also dropped the armhole at the side seam here. We lowered it. This is really lowering the armhole, not dropping it. This is dropping the armhole. This is lowering the armhole. And so we can kind of do that as well. And we also went out at the side seam. So these are kind of the changes that we've made to our shirt, right? I'm really conflicted about dropping my armhole down here, like lowering it. You can tell I'm conflicted. It's because I've added to the circumference. This sleeve is obviously very peaked, so I'm going to remove some of the ease, and then I'm going to drop the shoulder line and flatten it out a little bit. And you'll see sometimes these sleeves look like this. Flat, see, they've missed their cap like that, and that's when they've dropped it a lot. I'm not doing as an Alice job, am I, Libby? Alice is so good at explaining this stuff. I need to practice. All right, let's get our sleeve out. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to draw a line on a piece of paper. Now we're going to line the grain line up on our paper, and we're going to trace it off. This is I'm going to flip it over. I want a right side of my garden. We're going to trace it off. This gives me a second to think. Some of this stuff I can't think on the fly, so I need to regroup here. All right. This is my back and this is my front. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my cap. So if you dropped your cap 1.5 inches, if you dropped it 1 inch, if you dropped it a 1/2 inch, that's what you're going to do right now. We're just going to lop it off right there at the top. So whatever you went out here on your shoulder, you're going to take it off of the cap of your sleeve. Now we've dropped our armhole a little bit. I'm doing something wrong right now, I can tell. I think I'm doing something wrong. This is so funny. All right, we're gonna add our 3/4 here, or whatever you added in circumference here, we're gonna add that here. I think I'm gonna leave my armhole alone as far as lowering it here. But we're also gonna double check it. So this right here, we have these points here, we have this point here, right? Like this. Okay. Now we're gonna measure. I'm gonna get a cleaner ruler to measure. So let's measure our armhole. We're gonna mark right on the armhole seam here. So draw it in if you need to. I leave the seam allowance of this side seam here, but I remove it from the shoulder, and I'll show you why. It just kind of makes it a little more smoother to check your armhole. So I'm going to start at the shoulder seam right here, the juncture. Go around the armhole all the way to the raw edge of the seam. Do that a few times. Make sure you get an accurate number. Draw in your side, your armhole seam here. And same thing, we're gonna measure. I include the side seam allowance, but we're gonna go all the way to the shoulder seam. So 9 and 12 3/4, 9, 12 3/4. All right, now same thing. We're gonna go all the way to the underarm, the new underarm, and we're gonna go to the center point here, but we're gonna start at the underarm. So I'm gonna kind of pencil this in, this new shape. Just kind of give myself a guide. I'm just trying to find where my sleeve is at as far as how it measures to the armhole right now. So we have this new shape here. And so on my, oh, this is what I did wrong. I was like, what did that, okay. So 9, so we're gonna go 9. Right here. And then we're gonna do the other one on this side. Make sure you do your new line on the seam line, 1/2 inch away or whatever your seam allowance is. All right, and so my ease right now is about 1 inch. It's not much. Do I want to get rid of it? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to build up my underarm here, because that's going to give me a little bit more of a lift, and it's going to give me more space, like a longer underarm, kind of like a lift, right, that you put on a sleeve when you want more space and more mobility. And that would actually take out a little bit of this ease here. We're kind of going off the rails here. Well, not really. So in other words, what I'm saying is I could bring this up, right? Flatten this a little bit more. This would shorten this distance a little bit and get rid of some of this ease. I can leave the ease in there, or I could slash and overlap and get rid of it altogether. Because I still have some peak here between, like I have a narrower cap here and it's not very flat, I'm kind of inclined to either give myself a lift here or slash and, or just leave it in and ease it in. So I think I'm gonna give myself a lift. I really like doing this. It's a very non-traditional way to draft a sleeve. You don't see it very often. It makes a really big impact in your garment. So if you have trouble fitting, like being comfortable in set-in sleeves, adding a lift is a really great way to give yourself more fabric right here. So when you lift your arms up, your whole garment doesn't lift with you. It's just your sleeve lifts. You'll create a little bit of extra fabric on your sleeve sometimes if you do too much, if you're too aggressive with it, but you can get more range of motion. So I like that. All right, and so now let's measure, so I know where to put my notches. We're measuring on our new seam line. So that is right here. Where's my eraser? Here it is. There. And then over here, the back. Yeah, that's great. Now we have 3/4 of an inch ease. We're going to put our notch smack dab in the middle of those two. That's the center of your sleeve. You can see mine's way over here. Like I showed you earlier, my shoulder is really far forward. Yours is probably closer, like right here. It should be. It's a little closer to the center line there. All right. Let's get rid of this here so we're not confused. Who'd get confused? And as far as your hem circumference goes, I know that I want mine to be about, well, what was I going to do? I was actually thinking about, I think I'm going to add like an inch to the hem circumference. And this is, what do I want in lengthwise? So when you're measuring your sleeve length, what I like to do is measure from your center back neck down to where you want your sleeve to end. This is the most accurate way to get your sleeve length, because if you measure from your shoulder seam, this is a variable, obviously, right? We just monkeyed around with it a lot and we moved it. So you want that measurement to be from a point that's static and it doesn't move. So try from your center back neck and go down to where you want it. This is how I do that. I put a tape measure right at my center back and I stretch it out over my arm like this, and there's a knack to this. I put it over my elbow. When I'm doing my long sleeve, I will get it hooked on my elbow and I pull it like this. And I look at the measurement just like that, which has not changed in like 20 years. It's kind of amazing. On my short sleeve here, I'm gonna go with something kind of on the, like above my elbow, so like 17. That's what I'm going to go with, 17. So we're going to line up our back. We're going to overlap the seam line there, just like that. And now we can measure straight from the center back neck. From here all the way down, and this is 17 right here. So let's add we'll add 1 1/4 inches for a hem allowance like that. We're going to fold it in half. Your sleeve needs to be symmetrical from the armhole down. So we'll just cut a little bit right here. So we have our little armhole here. And then I'm going to square a line straight over at this length to the side seam. But I don't want it to be a point like this, so we're going to do a right angle from the underarm like this. So we have this nice, more of like a gentle curve. This way when we get to our underarm here, we have a nice transition for the seam. And we're going to go straight down. I'm going to add that same amount all the way down my sleeve. The amount that I added in circumference, we're going to go all the way straight down because that's how much I want. Because we have a right angle right here, we actually don't need a hem shape. You know how you do hem shapes occasionally? We don't really need a hem shape. This curve may be a little bit strong to get our hem to lay flat. We could also even add a facing if we wanted. Okay, so let's just true this up here, cut on my line. All right, so we've lowered our sleeve cap by a 1/2 inch. I gave myself a little lift here to give myself some space here. I went out for my circumference. We also determined where the center is. And I got about 3/4 of an inch ease, which is very easy to do. I won't even need a stitch for that. All right, let's draft a collar. You're gonna need your front and your back. And we're gonna do the facing too. And then we're done. Home stretch. All right, for the collar, again, you always start with a straight line. So we're gonna put a straight line on our paper here, just like this. This is a convertible collar. Convertible collar means that you can button it all the way up to the top. And when you unbutton one button, it still lays nice and flat at the front, kind of pops open, and it has a built-in roll or like a collar stand, right? So when you look at a convertible collar pattern, here's your center back, here's your shoulders, this is your center front. Usually the pattern is going to look a little bit, like you put it on a straight line, it's going to have a little bit of a space here and a space here. That creates the roll. And the roll is like right here, right? And doesn't that look like the collar you see on a button-up shirt? We just don't have the collar stand. So this is kind of what we're going for. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a straight line perpendicular to the one we just drew, something like that, right? So now you have this L. Now, I'm going to remeasure my neck, my two necks. So remember, we're going to measure our neck right on that seam line, only the finished amount. So mine's 5 1/4 in the back. And you're going to go from your center back seam to your shoulder seam on the seam line, whatever your seam allowance is. And I'm going to do this the same with the front. And when you go to the front, go to that center front line, not the extension. Don't include the extension of the button placket. We're going to go straight there. And same with stopping at the shoulder. Be really precise. Like I say, you're only going to have yourself to blame when it's hard to sew in. But it's not going to be hard to sew in. I've got some really great strategies for this. All right, so we have 4 1/8 for my front. So now we're going to take that back measurement. We're going to square over along our black line that amount. So whatever your back neck measures, draw a little dash. That's your shoulder notch right there. Let's zoom in a little bit. Is that far enough? Gotta get rid of a few screens. Okay, here we go. Just like that. All right, so this is my shoulder. And now we're gonna do the same thing with the front. So square across on your line, that amount, just like this. And how much did I say I want to do on this? I don't even have my note there. That's fine. All right, so now from this front mark right here, we're going to go straight up, just like that. And we're going to draw a line a 1/2 inch up. Hi, Adina, from this center front line. So this is the center front right here. So square a 1/2 inch up on that line right there. All right, and so now we're gonna draw a, well, kind of a straight line from here to that shoulder notch. And we're gonna measure 4 1/8. So what we want is, we want that to be 4 1/8, or we want that to be our front neck. So whatever your front neck measurement is, we're going to measure that on the line. And it's probably gonna be just shy of it, just shy of your line, and that's fine, just like that. All right, now, here's the fun part. You're showing the summer made several. Nice. Cool. That's awesome, Adina. All right, so we're going to square up from this neckline right here. This is the front neck. Let me draw this on here. Back, center back, front, shoulder. This is obviously the fold or the center, right? So from this little point here, you've measured from your shoulder to your center front. You can square up. I'm going to use a pencil at first, like this. So now you need to know like what your collar width is. We're going to use 2 1/2 inches here. It's a pretty standard amount. If you get anything bigger, it looks a little 70s-ish. And same with this point right here. So this line right here, this is that collar point right at the front. So if we look at this shirt right here, we can even look at this shirt and see what they did. That's awesome, Adina. Let's put this on the fold. Like this, right? And so, oh, whoops, got it upside down. Put this on the neck, like this. And so you see this little point right here? There's a wrinkle in there. That's what this is right here. Now, if we wanted something more 70s, we would go out like this, right? So then we'd have a more prominent point. So if you're trying to orient yourself on where you're at on your pattern piece right now, we're looking at the collar as if it's pushed up, like it's popped up. The neckline is up, and this is that silhouette. So if you have a collar in your wardrobe, you're like, I really don't like that, I would kind of look at it as a guide. But if you are kind of just wanting something very traditional, this is going to give you a very traditional shape. You can go out like, I used to go out like a 1/4, sometimes up to a 1/2 if you wanted a little bit more interest. And you would go out this way. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to establish the height of our collar, or the finished width. So we're going to do 2 1/2. 2 1/2, wait. No, I know I want, yeah, 2 1/2. Yeah, that's right. I started to doubt it because I was playing around with measurements for something else yesterday. And I was like, don't I want it at 3 1/2? It was not even for that. All right, so now I have a parallel line running along my back line here and my front, my lifted front line here. So you see this 2 1/2 inch, right? Pull that in. You're just going to kind of curve it gently. And the same thing here. We'll get rid of this little point. We'll kind of curve this gently. So now this right here is the variable. So if you really want a, you know, prominent 70s collar, you know, you're doing something like that. And you can make it wider, things like that. But we're just going to stick with something kind of calm. I'm going to make mine a 1/4 inch out. So we'll draw that 1/4 inch from this squared up line. And now we're going to blend this in with that width, just like that. And so this is my collar space. Now we're going to add seam allowance to the perimeter of this, except at the fold. I prefer 1/4 inch. I always do 1/4 inch for all necklines, sleeveless, collars, facings. 1/4 inch there, just like that, and a 1/4 inch below this neckline that you drafted. I know it's looking a little messy here. I always do a wiggly line from my back. So there's our collar. So if you were to fold this down at the center back line like that and kind of bring it around, there's your collar. Just like that. There's your collar. It's sewn at the neckline right here. It's a lot easier to sew with 1/4" seams. It's less bulky, it's a lot more maneuverable. Anytime you're sewing a straight seam to a curved seam like you are with this, because this is straight, right? Straight seam, fairly straight, right? Going to that curved neckline, it's so much easier to maneuver with a 1/4" seam allowance. You'll be a lot more accurate. It's a game changer for a lot of people. All right, so now we're gonna draft an undercollar really quick, which is really easy. We're going to trace this off. I highly recommend an undercollar, but if you don't want to do an undercollar, technically you can put your collar on the fold. I'll show you. So transfer your center. I should have drawn my straight line at the center back there first. All right, so there's my center back again, right? Now you can put this line on the fold. Yes, I know there is contour here, but it's kind of a budget style collar, and they'll just put this on the fold just like this. I don't know. I would put it like, yeah, I don't know. For me, I'm not a big fan of those. I think you lose a lot in your contour of the collar, and what'll happen is it will be a little baggy around the top of the collar where it's folded over and a little tight at the bottom. Yeah, exactly. So some of the fit things when you're doing a collar, like say you're like, I don't believe this is gonna work, Sarah. You can try it on your neckline and make sure maybe the way your neck sits on your body can change the way the collar will fit. So now say that your collar it just keeps riding up. Like this is, it's folded down. We can look at it with the riding up, right? So this is the back, right? Say you can't get this collar, this is the folded collar, and it's the center back neck, the lay flat down, it keeps creeping up. What you wanna do is you wanna kind of clip into the collar up to the seam line and spread it apart just a little bit. Or say that it keeps kind of like collapsing, like the perimeter outer edge of the collar just kind of seems floppy and kind of loose, and it's just sloppy looking. You probably want to tighten that up, and then you'd want to like slice in and overlap it a little bit. All right, so for our undercollar, what we're going to do is we're going to remove 1/8 inch depth right here down at the center back to nothing when we get to this collar point. So basically we're going to draw 1/8 inch parallel line. Sorry, I'm not sure about my millimeters. I think that's 3 millimeters. And then we want to taper it to nothing when it gets to that point there. Let me go a little bit more and go like that. And then the same here. Now this one's optional, but I still recommend you do it. So we're going to do 1/8 inch in the middle, right here, the fullest part right here. We're going to take away 1/8 and we're going to taper it to nothing at the point. Now when you taper it at the point here, if this is your collar point right here, when you taper it, I wouldn't go perfectly at the point like this. What I would do is I would kind of taper it just before the point, more like this. And that's because you don't really want to change the outer perimeter. And this is kind of a cheating way to do this. A lot of pattern drafters just skip to doing it this way because we're working on patterns that have seam allowance on them. But say you were drafting all of your pattern pieces without any seam allowance on it at all, then you could go perfectly to that point. But the fact that your seam allowance is built on there, what happens is you will be trimming off the length of your seam here on these two sides, and it'll be really hard to sew that together. We still want this to sew together around the perimeter of the collar, but you just don't want to go straight to this point like that. Because if you were to measure on the seam line here, it would cut off a little bit of the length here and here. So just kind of blend it in just before the point. Whoops, like that. That's drastic, but you know what I mean. Sorry. Can't even see. You're probably not even watching me at this point. You're probably like, oh my God, this is too much work, but it's not, I promise. All right, so we have our collar, we have our undercollar, and we're gonna cut this out and trim off that little bit. This is gonna make our collar lay nicer by making an undercollar. Again, I always do a wiggly line at back so I know that's the fold. One undercollar. One interfacing. One top collar. All right, now you could use your pocket from your button-up shirt, and you can use the same markings on where you're gonna place that. This is the button-up shirt pocket on the Archer, so you can have a lot of fun with that. My sleeve, that's how it's different now. I like it. You can do the undercollar on a bias. A lot of pattern companies do that. Archer does that. The Grain Line Archer does that. I don't need this. We just need a facing and we're done. That's it, okay? I'm just looking for a nice clean piece of paper, which I know I have some here. Oh, here it is. Ugh. All right, so get your front. Now the traditional camp collar has a facing along the center front. Now you can do a fold over facing or you can do a separate facing. Is it zooming out or not? There we go. Okay, here we have our facing. So let's say that you're low on fabric. What I would do is probably do a separate facing because you have more opportunities to position it on the fabric. A more budget style would be to do a built-on facing because it's one less seam to sew, but it also takes up a lot of fabric. I wouldn't consider that a budget, honestly. So it just depends on what you want. So if you want a facing that's built onto the garment, we would tape this piece of paper here and we would fold it on this button extension line, not the center front, but the button extension line. So I'm just going to use some temporary tape and show you. I'm going to do a separate facing for mine. Your facing is cut in your regular fabric. If you don't cut it, yeah, I was about to say exactly the same thing as Elena just said. If you don't use a built-on facing, you could do a contrast fabric. Just remember that when your lapel, it's not really technically a lapel, but when your front folds back on itself, you'd see that hit of color there, that color block. So if you want it to match, you need to do it in the regular fabric. So, all right, so you would fold it along the button extension, right? Just like this. my goodness. All right, and then you're just gonna cut around the perimeter of your neck and shoulder and your hem. Yeah, use the scraps you've been saving, exactly. So cut your hem and your neck and your shoulder, and we'll open it back up. And personally, I like my facings to be about 2.5 inches when there's a separate piece. And so up here, I would make it 2.5 inches wide, but down here, I would probably make it 2.25 inches wide. And that's just because we don't need a seam allowance right there where it's being attached to at the center front. And so it's gonna look like this. So we're gonna make this. Now this is just a preference. So the way I like to sew my facing, so often what I'm doing is French seams or flat felled seams. So I don't have my serger out. I'm not really using my serger on my project. So if there is a facing, what I end up doing is I just hem the edge or I turn it under. The button extension needs a facing, yeah. That's why we're doing this. So, all right, we're gonna go all the way up. When we get close up here, and we're gonna start at the shoulder. I'm gonna do a little bit wider, 2.5. Because remember, there's a 1/4 inch seam here. So that means that this is still 2.25 inches wide. So 2.5. And then when I get here, when you see a pattern company do this, so aggravating. You need a nice smooth line right here, like this. Because to hem this or to overlock it, you need a nice smooth line. And that's it. That's all you're gonna do. And you're gonna trim this off. Just like that. All right, and so now you have your built-in facing. And what I would do is I would notch right here. If you want to notch right there, yeah, you want both those notches. What am I talking about? You want this notch because this is where your collar is going to go, where to your center front, and then you want this one for your fold line. And down here, you just need the fold line one. They always give you this one, but you won't see it by the time you're doing your buttons and buttonholes, so it doesn't matter. All right, so now there's our built-on facing. So now let's say you wanted a separate facing. It's going to be kind of the same thing. Let's cut this off here. Use some removable tape. You're going to trace off your center front, sort of like what we just did, right? So you're going to lay that on some paper. And kind of the same thing. You're going to trace off this whole center front edge here. And then you're going to draw your line in the same exact way we just did. But you're going to want your width to be probably a little bit different at the center front. So I'm just going to use this piece here as my piece. It's already did the work. I'm just putting the fold line right on that. And now I just need to trim it off here, but you know what? We don't have a seam allowance on our center front here. I almost forgot about that. Let's add a little seam allowance here. So many details. All right, so let's lift up this front here. Right now, all we have on our front here is the extension for the buttons. We don't have a seam allowance. We only have a fold line. Oh, I missed. That's just lovely, Sarah. I'll just do that for now. I'll fix it in a little bit. All right, so I like 1/4 inch seams, like I keep saying, so I'm gonna put a 1/4 inch seam allowance to this edge here. It is, oh, I could have just added it to the piece of paper. I don't know why I just did that. I thought I had left some, but I don't know why, I just couldn't see it there. All right, so there's my 1/4 inch seam allowance. And now you're going to trace off your front. It's going to be flush with your shoulder, your center front, your neckline, and your hem. And then you're going to make your facing the width that you want. So for me personally, I like it, I would make it 2.5 inches the entire width. And that would be enough for me. I'm just going to trim off the center front edge here. I'm opting for a sew-on facing on this draft here. Now that's it. You don't need a back neck facing for the camp collar. Don't be afraid of that. I'm going to show you a good way to sew that, a little different than what you usually see. So there's our facing. And you're going to cut 2 in your self fabric or contrast if you want. And then you're going to cut 2 in inner facing if you need it. That's it. That's all our pieces. We're done. We made it. Sorry about all my sleeve doubts. I'm going to think about that. I'm going to explain it better tomorrow and tell you exactly what you need there just to make sure. All right, so tomorrow, so here's all your pieces. You have your front, your back. Look at our old shirt tail hem is there. We made our shoulder a little bit dropped, took out the yoke. We made the neckline. I made my neckline a little bit bigger. I added circumference. Here's my sleeve, my collar, my facing, and my pocket. I think you can draft a pocket, right? If you need. This one folds twice like this. I'm going to use my own pocket pattern because I have a bunch. But if you want to use the one from your button-up pattern, since you have it handy, it's right there. So tomorrow I'm going to show you how to do things like, where are they? Where's all my little thing? Here we go. Here we go. We're going to do, if you want to add a yoke, if you want gathers or pleats in the back, if you want to make it a pullover. And I think I covered all the other things like facing versus a button band. If you're doing a button band on here, you don't want the facing look. You're going to, you can either use the one that was on your button-up shirt because it most likely has a fold-over button band. That would work as well. But what you're going to do is look at it this way. So this is my 1/2 inch extension for my center front, right? So this is my center front line. So that means that this placket needs to be centered over this line, 1/2 inch on either side. So we need 1 inch going out from this seam line here, right here, 1 inch that way. For one more placket, that's one more fold. And if we wanted to do like the double fold thing, you're gonna do 2 of those. You're going to do one that's going to go behind. That gives you still a raw edge, so you need one more fold. So you need to fold it twice. So I would do 1 inch and 1 inch, or whatever this width is right here, your button extension, double that and add that amount twice to your center front. And then you'll just have a traditional button band where you fold it twice, edge stitch it, and it's done. So. Is it too much? A cuffed short sleeve, like rolled up and short. Okay, I'll write that on the list. Let's do that. Cuff, sleeve. I'm also going to do cut on. What other options would you like? Nice, Elena. Yeah, I was kind of surprised you were still here, Muslin. We talked about the sewing differences, which would be button band. We're going to do the pop over placket and pull over. I have cut on. I have I was going to do a cut on with a sleeve band, not a cuff, but we could do with a cuff too. What else? Oh, I'm going to add a back neck facing if you really want. Like say you don't have a yoke. Add a yoke. Those are all the things we're going to do. Yeah, the pop over placket. Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to play around with some sketches on how I want mine to look. So I think I want like a little point at the bottom. Is there a pleat in back below the yoke? I removed the yoke. So there isn't a pleat back here anymore. It just hangs straight. But we did add some circumference. Sleeveless. Oh, okay. Oh, all right. If we have time, we can do sleeveless. That's easy. There's a thing in the guild on how to do a, well, there's 2 little bonus streams in the sleeve SBS on how to change a cut-on sleeve to a set-in sleeve and a sleeved armhole to sleeveless and sleeveless to sleeves. Tucks. Okay, missed the beginning. Okay, no worries, Blue. Yeah, this is just the traditional camp shirt, but tomorrow I'm going to be adding one. I'm going to show you how to add a yoke with gathers or a pleat at the back. You could do gathers in the front. We'll show that too. Okay, I have that there. I think of all these options and then I forget. I miss one. Back neck facing, pullover, tucks. I do have tucks here, Shem. I mean, that was the guild, the community. I thought I told you about it, Adina. SoSoGuild.com. You can check it out. It's free to join. I think you're in there. I feel like you're in there, Adina. I think you joined. Shawl collar. Not going to draft a shawl collar. I mean, I'm not trying to sound, I'm sorry, that sounded so like strict. I'm not going to go into that realm. But a shawl collar is just so not a camp collar that I just didn't really think that it would be appropriate here. Oh yeah, no worries, Adina, yeah. Sorry, lollies. I can show you that another time though. Shawl collars are, for me, they're very much like a robe or... I've been seeing them on blouses lately. Like the Joni camp shirt has a shawl collar by So Liberated if you're interested in that. What other options do we want? We could do different hems. What about a dress? We have a long list here. Yeah, the tucks. I've done a few times where I've shown how to add tucks to things. So I'll go over that. Might put on the pocket. Oh yeah. Yeah, that'd be fun, Mullen. I mean, there's a lot of options. When you add the dress quotient, like you could just add a skirt to it, right? That's nice, Elena, cool. Do you wear it? That'd be a nice comfy shirt or dress to wear. You send a link to, what do you need to send a link to? You can't, but a mod can. What would you like? To the guild? I can do that. I think I actually, do we have that? Oh. Will this work? Oops. Oh, it did. I don't think that was a link. Here, let me give you a better one. An epaulette? No. Here you go. See you, Terry. An epaulette. Imagine. I mean, we could do puff sleeves, but we're kind of getting into how do you draft everything. All All right. The Birdish magazine shirt pattern. Birdish magazine. Is it for a camp shirt? We have a camp shirt group camp shirt sew along group in the guild. You guys are all welcome to join. It's free to join the guild. And then I promise I'm more competent than I'm sounding today. And there's it's a really great space. Like everyone that you see here is there. They're really awesome people. And there's a lot of resources. The camp shirt group is free to join as well. Oh, for the shawl collar, got it. Safari, yeah, so sometimes camp shirts get lumped in with safari shirts, but when you start looking at safari shirts, they're not at all like a camp shirt. You can do that, Adina. You can place a link there. Write a little post about it. Yeah, I don't know if Lollies is in the guild or not, but they could, if they want, they can join and check it out. All right, I'm going to head out. I'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, same place, 11 a.m. Pacific, and we're going to go over all these options. I will probably draft mine, and then Saturday, I'm going to sew it up. So, exactly, Elena. That's what I think, too. That's why I didn't even include it, Safari. Yeah, no worries, Adina. Yeah. Thank you. Cheers to you too, Blue. All right. Have a good one, you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. And thanks for coming.